That is how you do it. Alviel Troll getting the job done. Spam those W's to all my amazing Mets fans. First chiming in live and on replay to the latest New York Metropolitan post-game segment presented by BetUS and America's #1 sports book. We're going to deep dive in Metropolitan victory in this one as the Mets come in a 3-game set against the Baltimore Orioles and they take down said Orioles. The Mets blew a 3-0 lead, but they got it back in the end with a walk-off victory. El Troll, Mr. Francisco Alvarez, who has not been swinging the best bat as of late, continuing to deal with his shoulder ailment, the wrist, everything going on with him this season. Blast one a mile high, and it's out of here. The Mets, who had no recipe for this Baltimore Orioles bullpen whatsoever, absolutely pounced thanks to Francisco Alvarez when the Mets needed it most. This was a tight ball game. This was a sweaty one for sure, but what I want to see first and foremost is all my live viewers and my replay viewers spamming those W's in the show as we always do. If you're listening on audio, thank you so much. Make sure to leave a 5-star review if you enjoy our latest post-game segment. Make sure to check out BetUS, folks, by clicking that link down below in the description. That way you too get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. To all my live viewers here on YouTube especially. And as I mentioned, folks, we are now up on every audio platform. Spotify, Apple, Google, you name it, we got you covered with all the WardyNYM post-game coverage every single night, available wherever you get your audio podcasts. Make sure to check it out and leave a review if you haven't already. Thank you so much. Spam those W's in the live show, folks. That is what I want to see. We got to break down this ball game. We're going to get into all the key takeaways, of course, on the hitting and the pitching end. We're going to talk about that masterclass of an inning that we heard from the Mets kidcaster himself in Kingston, Mr. Yoshima. Thank you so much for the $2 holla. Yoshima says, nobody needed it more. What a win. What a victory, baby. I'm juiced up. The Mets need this. We know that. We're going to get into a bit on the pitching end. David Pearson, what was another very sharp outing for Pearson, and basically 1 and 2 pitches that he would like to have back, which was a difference maker, but still another start where David Pearson is on the bump, and another game the Mets win. The Mets have continued to win the vast majority of ball games that David Pearson has been on the bump as our starter for, and that did not waver even with the Mets giving up those 3 runs in this ball game through the 7 innings against the Baltimore Orioles, who I absolutely love those O's. They're a wagon of a team, but thankfully the Mets took game 1 and they need this one to say the least. On the hitting end, we're going to break down all the key takeaways, headlined by JD Martinez and headlined by Francisco Alvarez. Once the bullpen came in for Trevor Rodgers and the Orioles, the Mets simply had no recipe to handle said bullpen up until Francisco El Troll Alvarez was a difference maker. My apologies, folks. So also, if the jingle is playing or not, let's make sure it runs now, folks, as we always do with the official WardyNYM post-game jingle. Shout out to my guys Greg and Jordan with the official WardyNYM post-game jingle. As always, I see those donations that we're going to get into in a second. Thank you guys for spamming all those emojis. LFGM, hell yeah, brother. Let's go, Hector. Juice me the heck up. I got to focus my camera. Let me try to do that real quick, and then we'll continue on with the show. Come on, camera. There we go. Do your thing. You love to see it. Wardy's out of town, but the Mets continue to win. They get a big victory. A massive walk-off victory by a final score of, 4-3 in this one. John, thank you so much for the $2 haul. Great member of the show. John says, roller coaster of emotions. Love it. Love it too, John. Let it rip, baby. Mike with a $5 haul. Thank you so much, Mike. Mike says, never shut up from my couch so fast. Nearly gave my old lady a heart attack. Back LFGM, Alvy, let's go, Alvy, baby. Hype me up, Mike. Mike, thank you so much for your service as always. Thank you so much for being a diehard Mets fan. And shout out to you for being exactly what all Mets fans were in that moment, folks. I literally was behind, of course, because I'm out of town at the moment. My stream that I was watching was a full, batter behind everyone else, so I was following more so with pitch by pitch while watching side by side with my stream. Then I got a text from my brother saying, which I knew meant it was a walk-off bomb. What else could it be? Seconds later, Alvy, high heater, nuke, see ya, ball game, Mets victory. That is what we love to see. Cherno, Rebecca, Eric Roper, Caution going up the list, Steven up in here. We got Yoshima, as I mentioned, Diego, Nobody, Camp, Illusion, all my live viewers, Alex Flores, my great members. Thank you so much for taking the time. SR, how are you as well? If you guys are watching live on YouTube, make sure you continue smashing that like and subscribe button as we live and react together to the latest victory in Mets land as they take down the Baltimore Orioles in a walk-off fashion by a final score of 4-3. We're going to get into every aspect of this ball game here in a second. Joey in the chat feels confident by saying this is a season saver for now. Yes, for now indeed. The Mets are, as we currently stand, 1.5 games out of the third wildcard spot. The Atlanta Braves, I don't believe, play today. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. For my live viewers in the show watching live here, if you're watching on Twitter X, make sure to hit that like, that follow button, that retweet button. But please know, as always, I'll only be interacting with our live viewers here on YouTube. So make sure you head over to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, while also following the WardyNYM and the WardyNYM Twitter accounts. One is WardyNYM, which is just my personal, and the WardyNYM is the official WardyNYM account now with 64,000 strong followers. So thank you guys so much for the support there. But the Mets are just at 1.5 games out. They could have easily pounced more if they just had winning ways in their previous series. More than 2 out of 3 against Miami. They faltered in a tight 1-run ball game. And in a 1-run ball game today, the Mets were able to take advantage of somehow, some way, a Baltimore Orioles team that has not played its best baseball this year. Not only going back to the month of July, where they've basically been a 500 ball club, but more so in 1-run ball games. Yes, who would have had on their bingo card the big bad Orioles, who I absolutely admire greatly from front office down. What they have done over the past couple years as a true rebuild has been nothing short of fantastic for themselves, the organization, the fans, and the new owner who has a willingness to spend. Shout out O's. I got nothing wrong with any of them there, not in James McCann for the most part. But what I can tell you about this matchup is now the Orioles are 12-14 at least this season in 1-run ball games. So the Mets did a fantastic job on at least securing the victory, where the odds were in their favor at least slightly. The Mets have had their fair share of 1-run ball games this season, probably more than most this year. If we look back at that miserable May, how many of those losses for the Mets were within a run or two? Felt like the vast majority did not, and it had a lot to do with the Mets walking everyone their mother. Thankfully for the Mets, they had stellar starting pitching, headlined by David Pearson, this outing that we're going to break down in depth here in a second. A bullpen led by Jose Budo and Edwin Diaz, shutting the door, getting the job done. And while there was some initial controversy as to did Carlos Mendoza make the right decision or not with David Pearson's final line today that we'll get into, I'll break that down shortly. All in all, it works out for the Mets in the end as they take this one again by a final score of 4-3. And the great member of 16 months says Francisco mother effing Alvarez, baby. El Troll, Alvy, who has labored far more than others as of late in this lineup. Alvarez, who bursted on the scene this season when he returned from injury. He was spreading the ball for opposite field. He was hitting for contact, hitting plenty. Who would have thought that it would take this long for Alvarez to secure his first home run in 3 weeks and his first walk-off RBI of his career? Eltro Alvarez is just getting started. And for all my schmucks out there saying, Wardy, Alvarez is never going to be that guy. He's never going to be a solid contact hitting catcher, at least with some strong power. I got a bridge to sell you. Alvy has went through hell and back with injuries already this season as a young man at the backstop. He has a lot more growing to do. We're aware of that, but we all saw what our very own eyes last season what Alvarez is capable of with the power when it is right, and that high fastball of a home run is yet the latest example of the untapped potential and power that is Mr. Eltro Alvarez. I digress, everybody. Let's break down this ball game. I want to rapid fire this one because then I want to see more of your reactions as we always do in this matchup, folks. And again, thank you all so much to everyone that have taken the time to smash that like and subscribe button. Trust me when I tell you, a balk and a blast had me as fuming as everyone else, but it doesn't matter. The Mets win. We move on. Can we listen to you on audio? Of course we can, Hogwatch. Everybody, if you don't know already, once more, checking me out wherever you get your audio podcasts. Spotify, Apple, Google, you name it, look up WardyNYM, and we got our every single night post-game coverage uploaded shortly after our live shows here the very night for the Mets and their post-game coverage. Check it out, guys. Thank you so much, as always, Hogwatch. And yes, we will put the audio link. Actually, we can put that in the show right now. Give me 1 second, everybody, so you guys can all pull it up, especially on Spotify, should you guys want to go out and give it a check. Let's see if YouTube allows me to do this. I believe that they're going to. Awesome. All right, folks, let's see. It'll be in the description here in 1 second too. Appreciate all you guys, my 300 plus live viewers. We're almost at 100 likes already. Thank you guys so much for that. Let me just make sure we're all set up here with audio, then we're good. Audio in the description. And we are rolling. Let's break down this ball game, everybody. Let's do it. But I got to ask before I do, the final thing for each and every one of you is the following. On a scale of 1 to 10, what was everybody's confidence level heading into the bottom of the ninth in a tie-tied ball game against the Baltimore Orioles? I'll be completely frank. Heading into the bottom of the ninth, my confidence level was probably at, I'd say, a 4.5, 5, kind of 50-50. I knew that all it took was for the Mets to get a runner on base and they could really try to pounce here. And I also like their matchup there against Sir Anthony because that's a guy at least that the Mets know better during his long time with the Philadelphia Phillies over the past couple years from their bullpen, and not a guy that is unfamiliar like a Keegan Aiken who struck out the side against the Mets in the 8th inning. Having familiarity, I firmly believe, helped the Mets at least a little bit there in the 9th inning against Sir Anthony and the Phillies here. Pardon me, not the Phillies, the Orioles, funny enough. Phillies were the team that they traded with. That's why I have them on my mind here. And because of that reason, that's why there was a level of confidence. And it was great to see Alvarez pounce on that pitch, a high heat, and take absolute advantage of that opportunity given him. Let's see, Eric 78. Come on, Wardy. I'm sorry. Look, the reason why it wasn't higher for me is because the Mets were flailing left and right heading into the 9th inning. We all watched the same ball game. You saw the Mets offense get shut down completely by that bullpen of the Orioles up until Alvy sent us home. That's just how it is. And I really commend Alvarez not only for that big home run, but ultimately how the Mets were able to bounce back, losing initially that 3-run lead that they had early on in this ball game. Now let's break down, rapid fire this one, inning by inning, as we always do, everybody. And thank you all so much in advance for everyone that's in here, chiming in and smash that like and subscribe button. It starts here in the first that we see for the Baltimore Orioles. They get a leadoff runner on, and Austin Slater bats leadoff there, gets a walk. Thankfully, Adley Rutschman, one of my favorite catchers in Major League Baseball, him and Alvarez will be leading the way as two of the best young backstops for years to come, I firmly believe. Adley grounds into a double play, and Gunnar Henderson, who was an absolute MVP candidate coming out of the American League outside of Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, sadly for his case, but not for the Mets here, strikes out to end the inning. As many of you guys have been great followers on the channel, especially if you follow my work on Bleacher Report that I actively do content for them every single month, I can tell you that I've been on the Orioles bandwagon for a while now. This is pretty much since Adley made his debut, and I knew heading into this season, heading into this series in particular, this O's team would be no easy task. Even with them not playing their best baseball as of late, this is still an Orioles team that could easily come in and win the next 2 games and would be far from shocking to me. So to see the Mets secure a walk-off victory is that much more important, knowing that they did it against a star-studded, a locked and loaded roster here in the Baltimore Orioles. And with 1 out, we see Mark Vientos get the Mets' first hit of the day. And that would be important because JD Martinez would then drive him in. JD absolute rips one, goes oppo because of course he does. Only JD Martinez can go oppo on a pitch down and in there on the hands. He goes oppo for his 13th home run this season, gives the Mets a 2-0 lead. JD Martinez, who has hit home runs in his past stretch of games now, not consistently, but has basically hit one every other game on a rate right now over the past week or so. JDM finding his swing, finding his groove, going more gap to gap, hitting those home runs when called upon. Obviously, you want as much consistency with the power-hitting slugger that is JD, but at least for the Mets here, even though we later on in this ball game, had quite the impact early on here to give themselves an early 2-0 lead over, yes, the Baltimore Orioles. And Starling Marte, again, one of his first games back in the lap, he's looking good. And I told each and every one of you that have been following your WardyNYM, the YouTube platform at least, that once Starling Marte returns, that bat is going to be vital. It's going to be very impactful. He's a contact-hitting first guy that can steal bags for you still. Yes, the defense is far from great, but that's not what you're getting there in Marte. It's the bat-to-ball skills and his ability to impact baseball games, not only with the bat, but of course with his ability there on the base pass. Alex with the $2 in the chat says, my boy Alvy, let's effing go. Can we take this series? We can take this series. I firmly believe we can. Fingers crossed it happens. Before we break things down further, Alex Soto with the $5 haul. Thank you so much. I'm glad you did the jingle. Rebecca Ellen would not have been happy. Troll need this. Hopefully this boosts his confidence. We need his bat. Absolutely. And I know Rebecca loves it just as much as a lot of other followers here on the channel do, with the official WardyNYM post-game show, as always. And El Troll needed that, to say the least. The Mets needed that, and that's why it feels so good to see the Mets not only secure a walk-off home run victory, but for them to secure it as well, knowing that they got El Troll Alvarez to lead the way in that regard. Enzo, thank you so much for being here, my man. Great supporter, as always. And the Mets would get Starling Marte on here with a single still in the first inning, and star-studded Starling rips and runs for his 13th stolen bag of the season. Marte is a runner in scoring position for Jose Iglesias, who sadly grounds out. David Pearson works a quick, nice 1-2-3 inning in the second. A pair of groundouts and then a foul-tip strikeout on Eloy Jimenez, the power-hitting slugger coming over from the Chicago White Sox of Southside this past trade deadline. And speaking of trade deadline, the Mets matched up against a former southpaw from Miami that they know very well, 2021 All-Star, in which he really hasn't been that same exact pitcher since then, dealing with ailments and inconsistencies. Trevor Rogers, who was acquired by Baltimore for an absolute haul of a prospect return that I firmly still believe is a lopsided trade. Trevor Rogers ends up going 5.2 innings of true earned run ball against the Mets in here, so carried himself well, and a guy that understands Citi Field and understands this team well. I will give a tip of the cap, didn't have a horrendous start against, but thankfully the Mets were able to pounce early on him at the very least here. They go down in order, 1-2-3 in the second. Then as we advance to the third, Colin Cowser, the milkman himself, if you know, you know, what a great rookie year Colton's been having. He gets on with a single. Then we see Cowser steal his 8th bag of the year, but Austin Slater strikes out for a clean inning of work yet again for David Peterson. As we then head to the bottom of the third, it's a 1-2-3 inning that we see there for the Mets and the Orioles. And sadly, JD Martinez, when he grounds out, was a beautiful play churned there by Jackson Holliday, who I'm sure is going to be a stud just like what his father was. Maybe not so much on the consistent home run hitting, but all-around play, a true 5-tool player. There's what you may have in Jackson Holliday throughout the peak of his career. He's exciting to say the least. As we then get on now to the top of the fourth, we see with a couple outs, Anthony Santander, the home run hitter that's leading the way for Baltimore this year, get on with a single. And so does Ryan Mountcastle, two of the guys that you maybe don't think of right away when you think of the O's, because right away you think Adley Rutschman, you think Gunnar Henderson, maybe even to a degree you think Cedric Mullins with his big breakout year a couple years ago when he decided to bat just from one side instead of switch hitting. Either way, what we have here, Mr. Cedric Mullins and also Ryan Mountcastle and Anthony Santander, is one of the deepest lineups in all Major League Baseball. And they would get two on here with two out, but thankfully, Mr. Eloy Jimenez grounds out because of Mark Vientos flashing the leather. A beautiful diving stop to make sure that ball does not get out the infield. Gets the force out there at second base. Mark Vientos looking brilliant at the hot corner today, not looking like a guy that's labored there at the position to this point in his professional career. And the Mets continue with their 2-0 lead as they then head to the bottom of the third. In the bottom of the third, we see Pete Alonso rip his 28th double of the season into the gap there. That would be huge. After the Marte double, not the Marte double, after the Alonso double, we would then see Mr. El Troll Alvarez get on with a walk. Mets have themselves runners at first and second here, 2-out hitting. What are they going to do? What is Tyrone Taylor going to do there? Getting the start for the Mets in the 8-hole, batting in left field today. Tyrone Taylor drives them in with a beautiful call that we heard from the kidcaster Kingston himself today. Major shout out to Kingston. I thought he was brilliant. Clearly did his homework. Clearly has prepared a while to get this opportunity with Gary, Keith, and Ron. And even though the kid's not even like 10 years old, it doesn't change the fact that he was absolutely calm, cool, and comfortable and professional, and really something to admire for a lot of young Mets fans that go out of their way to watch Mets games with their dad, with their family, with their friends, and listening to GKR. To have Kingston there as an example of what the future could be for the next young studs there in the broadcasting industry or the sports field itself, you have to really admire what Kingston was able to do today. So cannot say enough great great things about the Kidcaster. I thought he did a brilliant job as he effortlessly made this beautiful 2-out run single call for Tyrone Taylor to give the Mets a 3-0 lead. As we then head now to the bottom of the, as we then head to the top of the 5th, we would see the Orioles try to respond back and fast. Let me just double check to make sure I didn't miss anything here. I did not. Shout out my over 1,000 concurrent viewers. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate all the support here, everybody. And again, if you're chiming in live here on Twitter, make sure that follow button, that retweet button, and that like button. But please know, as always, I'll only be interacting with our live viewers that we have here on YouTube. It's my 300 plus strong at the moment. Thank you guys all so much for the support there. I greatly appreciate that. And let's continue to break down this ball game as the Mets win a victorious one, thankfully, because of Mr. L. Troll and his walk-off heroics that we had in this matchup. The Mets now multiple games above 500 still, looking to do more damage, looking for a second consecutive series win. Will they secure that series win? We will find out soon enough, folks. But let's continue to get into this one, as they won this one, again, not comfortably. It was a sweaty one, but a victory is a victory. Not before Ramon Urias, however, gets himself a double that we see in the top of the 5th. His 8th double of the season. Then a throwing error, sadly, by David Pearson allows the runner to get to 3rd, and that's where things came back to bite the Mets a little bit here because Jackson Holliday grounds out to drive in a run, but thankfully that's all she wrote there. David Pearson, naturally frustrated with himself, has a throwing error to try to get the throw there to Lindor in 2nd on the tag, not in time. It gets around him, and the runner gets to 3rd and ultimately home thanks to Jackson Holliday. The Mets are still up, this time only by 2 as we head to the bottom of the 3rd as Francisco Lindor gets on with a walk and then steals his 25th bag of the year. Lindor is completely in line once again for another 30-30 season, and he'll be the first shortstop in either a minute or quite literally in MLB history to do so in back-to-back seasons. But funny enough, he might not be the only one, as Bobby Witt Jr. is directly in line to do exactly that as well. Bobby Witt, Lindor, two of the best shortstops in the game today, and I spoke glowingly of Witt going back to the offseason that he's already a top 3 shortstop in the game, and that is showcasing itself once again this season, and so is Francisco Lindor's continued play as the leader in F4 since batting in the leadoff position that we preached about plenty this season, going all the way back at least a month, if not longer ago. Alonso gets on there with a walk after a JD Martinez single, a JD Martinez strikeout rather. That was a frustrating one there for JDM. 2 on, 2 out there, and we see Colin Selby come in as a reliever there to face Marte. Trevor Rogers' days is done, and after a quality at-bat with Starling Marte, he sadly foul tips it and strikes out, and we head then to the top of the 6th. At the top of the 6th, David Pearson works his final 1-2-3 inning of the day. All ground outs, all solid David Pearson work. The Mets go down in order in the bottom of the 6th, and then as we head to the top of the 7th, Ryan Mountcastle gets on with his 28th double of the year. Then we see with 2 outs later, with Ramon Urias batting, sadly, it would be a balk call. The first balk called against David Pearson in his young career. Pearson, who sadly looked like after review that it could have been a balk there. I mean, I'm no balk expert, but after initially reacting about it and saying that I really felt like he got screwed there and seeing other balk comparisons, it does lead me to believe that that was possibly a balk there for David Pearson, unfortunately, and that would hurt the Mets at a terrible time because, mind you, Pearson got a massive strikeout on Colin Cowser after giving up that double to Ryan Mountcastle. He retires the next 2 batters he faces, so I'm not going to fault Carlos Mendoza all that much here for keeping Mr. Pearson in the game. Yes, do the numbers go against David Pearson from the 6th, 7th inning on to suggest that he's not going to perform well? Yes, that is true. If you look at Pearson's splits throughout the season, when he gets deeper in the ball games, naturally you're going to have bigger problems, which isn't shocking. That tends to be the case for a lot of starters in Major League Baseball. But in the case of Peterson, especially when that pitch count gets from the range of 76 to 100, he has given up an opponent batting average of 268 and 872. So even with the game feel, the numbers told you that, yes, he got those 2 outs, but you should probably pull him. Still, even having said that, this was a game feel where I actually agree with Carlos Mendoza. 100% a quality strikeout there on Colton Cowser as well. This is where you can make the rightful gripe, in my opinion, about the situation. Peterson somehow balks, that being in Ryan Mountcastle, which, allows the run to score when facing that being in Urias and that at bat. Why not have a mound visit at that point then to make sure that Peterson isn't rattled? Because the very next pitch, it's down, it's a meatball, and it's the 8th home run of the year for Ramon Urias, who rips his 8th double and home run of the season. 16 total extra base hits there, not including triples on the year for Ramon. Ties the ball game 3-3. Jackson Holliday strikes out, but not before the Orioles tie this ball game up. Now, at that point, with the Mets tied this ball game after being up 3-0 in said matchup, my frustration level wasn't ultimately at an all-time high, but I was more than anything saying, oh my God, like really a balk and a blast? This is our effing luck. Like this is just how it is. We're not allowed to have nice things as Mets fans. Is this really the beginning of the end? Because there's plays like that, it's situations like that that are so Metsy that make you believe we're not coming back in this one. And guys, help us get to 200 plus likes to my live viewers on YouTube if you haven't already. Thank you so much for that. We see Pat with the $5 haul in the chat says, I know the Mets usually have one offensive blowout and the rest of the series is one-run games that they seem to be a mixed bag. 100%, that's been their recipe a lot that we've seen post All-Star break. Is that a good thing? Does that mean that you're going to have continued success? Not necessarily. We all know the flaws of this Mets team as we've been watching every day throughout the 162, but we also know that the Mets can continue to impress and surprise us in ways that maybe we didn't expect. And there were a lot of fans that were fairly pessimistic heading into the bottom of the ninth here, and I don't blame them when you saw how the relief matchups were looking heading into that at bat. But ultimately, a former Philly means that you're going to do damage here if you're the Mets, and Alvarez did what needed to be done as they win this one by a final score of 4-3. But it's a tie ball game, 3-3. We get to the top of the eighth. Then we see Jose Butto come in. He gives up a 2-out walk to Gunnar Henderson. Then he gets a pop out of Anthony Santander. That's fine. For those wondering why wasn't Jose Butto utilized earlier in this ball game, the potential counter is the Mets have actually been very wary of Butto's overusage as of late, eating multiple innings. It appears that given the lack of consistency with the reps he's been having as to how many days will he go in between outings, one, and how deep is he going in between them, it has hurt his health status a little bit over the past couple weeks, according to Gary, Keith, and Ron that we heard in the booth. So the Mets not utilizing Jose Butto seem to have a bit more to do with them not wanting to utilize him for 2 innings again after they did that just 3 days ago, and instead having to utilize him for 1 inning of work at least, and then to have Edwin Diaz in the non-save situation in hopes that you walk it off in the 9th inning. And thankfully, a ballsy move by Carlos Mendoza in this case works out in the end as they win this one in that walk-off fashion. But before we get there, we would then see for the bullpen of the Orioles, they continue to shut down the Mets. After Trevor Rogers came in this one, we saw Selby come in and retire the first 3 batters he faced, saw via strikeout. Then he got a pop out as well, which was quality. Then we see Keegan Aiken and strike out all but 1 batter that he faced. Aiken, the southpaw, who's brilliant working his off-speed pitches. That slider is nasty work when it bends in there. He had 2 innings of no hit, no earned run, no walk ball, and 5 strikeouts on the day. So this is where the pessimism came in for some fans, including myself, especially because the Mets are getting completely shut down by this bullpen. Why should I have confidence? Shame on me for not believing in Alvarez enough, who walks it off with his 6th home run this season, his first home run in basically a month. That's what it feels like. And for El Troll, his first walk-off RBI of his young and what is bound to be a very exciting career with the team in Queens. Mets 2128, great donation. Thank you so much, my man. Biggest flaw of the Mets, Mendoza being a gambler. I would argue that's been a blessing and a curse. It has worked for the Mets at times and it has hurt them at times. Could you make the argument that Mendoza's ballsiness has hurt them more than has benefited them? Maybe on the bullpen front, maybe that's where it stuck out a little bit more. But offensively, I would argue that to not be the case because him touching the offense only has so much impact, 1. And 2, he has shown a willingness to be ballsy with his decision-making, to move guys out of their typical spots. And this is Buck Showalter. Brandon Nimmo's still batting leadoff this entire season, and Lindor hasn't batted leadoff once, right? Like, those are differences I think you see in a first-time manager, one that's really trying to make a statement for himself in a big market. So while I understand criticisms to a degree with Mendoza, absolutely, I've criticized him plenty this year when it has been warranted. I do not believe it to be consistent enough to say that he has been a great demise for the Mets this season. I would even argue that without Mendoza, the Mets could be in a much worse position than what they currently are, not having a team first manager that can help really rally the guys around and go beyond just what you're seeing there with the analytical numbers that really can dissociate a manager feel from a player feel when there's all these information in the way versus trusting that gut that Mendoza has essentially prided himself on all season long as a first-time manager. Let's see. So one of the worst managers we've ever had, Priest on a plane, it's okay to lie. I mean, imagine calling Carlos Mendoza one of the worst managers we've ever had, as if the Mets don't have an illustrious history of some of the worst managers that one could possibly ask for. Like, are you kidding me right now? Again, you guys are just acting spoiled and very short-term reaction is what I'll have to say this. Frank, I guess I do, my man. I guess I do, right? I hope so, at least. But all right, guys, let's break down more about this ball game because we also have some updates to get into that I would like to share with you before we get out of here. And actually, I'll just share those updates with each and every one of you now because they're nothing too crazy here. The latest on Danilo Nunez is the following. Mets right-hand relievers posted just over a 2 ERA and 30-plus innings this season. Expected numbers are brilliant. The K to walk ratio is absolutely fantastic, right around a 10. He has been nails in multi-innings or just one inning of relief as our little Edwin Diaz with that lively fastball touching high 90s and that high velo with the slider touching the high 80s. Danilo Nunez is going to pitch 15 to 20 pitches tomorrow there in AAA Syracuse for the Mets. That may very well be his lone rehab outing before returning to the Mets at some point over this next week. So great news, folks. Danilo Nunez is reaching his final step before arriving. That is what we love to hear. The same thing that we love to hear with Brandon Nimmo, who exited yesterday's game after balling out with the offensive heroics with a game-leading home run. Sadly, they faltered still with Nimmo being out of the ball game in the end, making a gorgeous diving catch to save a run at least there in left field, makes a hack, and we see the shoulders out feeling comfortable, exits the game, gets the MRI done, and thankfully there's nothing too concerning with Nimmo. He's day-to-day with his shoulder issue right now, but he will be back with the Mets in due time. And yes, we also have here Liz Ben has in fact left the Mets. She will officially be leaving the Mets at the end of the season. I will inform you all here in a second on who Liz Ben is in case you're unaware. But the latest on Brandon Nimmo that was just posted is the following, according to SNY. Brandon Nimmo says that today's injury news was the best case scenario for his shoulder. Says that he did not swing a bat today, but he is very happy and he felt better than he initially expected heading into this morning when he had woken up. So great news there for Brandon Nimmo, as I mentioned, who's finally balling out, finally finding his swing again, looking locked in, and that is absolutely huge. As we see here as well, folks, as I mentioned with Liz Ben, the final update here is on the following. For those that didn't know Liz and what type of impact that she had in the Mets organization and will have for the remainder of the year, even though she's leaving, is the following. Ben had served as the Mets director of Major League Operations the past 3 seasons, and she was the highest ranking female in the Mets organization for baseball operations. So I don't know the exact reason as to why Liz is departing at the end of the season, but whatever is happening with her and her future endeavors, I'm wishing her the absolute best. Just want to fill you guys in because that is another role that will be now changing with the Mets to a lesser degree versus the scouting departures that they had made over the past week as well. David Stearns is going to be making a lot of changes to the front office to really have all of his guys there, including an impending decision on whether or not he even wants to hire a GM or not that we will speak about more at great length this offseason. But I did touch on it briefly and how Jeremy Hefner's name is in fact in that hat, whether you love it or not, in our video that came out about a day or so ago on the channel with the latest Big Mets updates. Highly implore you all to check them out in case you haven't already, everybody. But folks, I want to get your comments, questions, and concerns here very soon, so I'm going to rapid fire our biggest takeaways there on the offensive and pitching side of the ball in said matchup. But before I do, let's hear a quick word from today's amazing sponsor on the channel, a sportsbook that you all know very well, America's best at BetUS.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Shout out to BetUS as always, everybody. Where the games begin indeed. Make sure you click that link down below the description in case you haven't already. That way you too get a 125% bonus, not on your first, not your second, but your first 3 deposits. And as I mentioned, the Mets are just 1.5 games out right now of that third wildcard spot with potential to be just within a half game, depending on the status of tomorrow's matchup for the Atlanta Braves as they get kickstarted with their next series. I'd be lying if I said I knew the Braves were playing next. So actually, no, that's a lie. I do know who they're playing. They're playing the Philadelphia Phillies. So that's a big series between the two teams as well. I don't want either to win, but for the sake of the standings right now, the sake of the wild card, let's go Phillies sadly over that stretch, even though I wish both teams could just be blown up and off the face of the earth. We're not allowed to have nice things. But we are allowed to have nice things in a walk-off victory, and that's what we're going to highlight today. And let's start with the brilliance that was David Pearson's outing. Seriously, David Pearson continues to be absolutely nails for the Mets and continues to be, in my opinion, one of, if not their most reliable starter as of late we have now found this season. Outside of Luis Severino, there are a few guys that I have more of a faith in than Mr. David Pearson. And while Sean Manaea is absolutely lumped in that group too, a comfort level of Sevy, Manaea, and Pearson are fairly similar right now with how consistent David has been this season and the over 70 innings that he has pitched. And a great note note that Gary made on air for SNY today, which is absolutely true, is knowing that Pearson did not get his season started until the summer due to hip surgery from this past offseason means that he's a full go. It's not like that we got to worry about dialing Pearson back, that he's on an innings limit, or that there's major concern level with his supposed injury. Knock on wood at the moment, at least. Pearson can go full throttle, pitch the game that he wants to pitch, and then it's up to Mendoza on if it's the right or wrong decision to pull him when they're contemplating to do exactly that. Ray with a $2 in the chat says, love a W, especially on a walk-off. Thank you, Wardy. No, Ray, thank you, my man. Thank you so much for the endless support for the donation. Who hired Hefner? The hire of Hefner actually goes all the way back, I believe, to Steve Cohen and Stanley Alderson. I don't even know if Jared Porter did the hire. I want to say it was Steve Cohen and Alderson going all the way back. So Hefner has went through all Mets regimes under Steve Cohen with the multiple front offices. There's reasons for that go beyond just his impact as a pitching coach, which is why it's not all that crazy to think of him in a higher role, but not one that I see all Mets fans being excited about, knowing that he's kind of a polarizing topic depending on the fan you talk to. You either love or hate Jeremy Hefner. There really is no in between from what I found thus far. But let's get into it now on David Pearson. What stood out so much about his masterful outing in this one? We're going to take all these numbers courtesy of Baseball Savant here to break down a little bit on his arsenal. Our good pitching contributor, Isaac Roppin, will not be having a report for us tonight, but there's good reason. He's kicking things off with his semester now in college, so he is going to have some nights where he's not around because he can't stay up too late. Tonight is one of those nights, but that's okay. We love you, Isaac, and we wish you the best here for your new semester of school. Shout out to everyone going back to school. I remember that feeling. Don't love it, but I hope you guys have an absolute blast, and I hope that you guys get the schooling that you're looking for and hopefully get the degrees that you're trying to seek. David Pearson, though, and this one through the kitchen sink. We love it. Sinker 42% of the time. Heavy sink today, and that worked beautifully as he induced those ground ball outs as well as he did, including a full ground ball out inning. Ground ball out, ground ball out, ground ball out that we saw around a halfway or so throughout the start. Pearson topped out 95, sat 92 on the heater with the sinker. Changed up 19% of the arsenal, topped out 86, sat 84. We see 86, topped out 86, sat 84. Four-seam fastball, 18% of the arsenal, topped out 95, sat 93. Slider, 17% of the arsenal, topped out 87, sat right around 85. And the curveball topped out at 80 miles per hour and sat 78, 79. That was 5% of the arsenal. And the swing and miss, that slide piece worked in his favor. Pearson got a solid 38% whiff rate on that slider that he threw 17% of the time tonight. That helped induce the strikeouts that he had. Also had a 25% whiff rate on the four seam and the change, so nothing crazy there, but really was able to take advantage of that put-out pitch in the slider that worked in his advantage in this one for sure. And that sinker as well did induce a lot of whiffs because you're utilizing it for the ground ball outs more than anything, but a very sharp start for David Pearson now, where this is another quality one. And as the Mets continue to get wins this season, David Pearson has been far and away their most winning pitcher this year out of everyone involved. Jose Budo, Edwin Diaz held their own once again that we saw the bullpen, which is nothing short of fantastic. Sign me up. Give me more of that, please, and thank you. And as we shift to the offensive end of the ball, what stood out so much in this one, folks, before I get on to a quick prospect report, and then I'm just going to rapid fire answer whatever comments, questions, or concerns you have for me and the live show for a solid 5-10 plus minutes before we get out of here. Don't worry, everybody. We will be back with live callers this week. Not exactly sure yet. However, it may be as soon as tomorrow, or it may not be until sometime later on this week as we get into that road trip there. A grueling road trip with all those games out west. No less, we will be doing callers at least one, if not multiple times this week. Want to make sure we're in a rhythm of them as we already have now just 35 games or so left this season. I cannot believe the year has went as fast as it is. I cannot believe that we've already covered the vast majority of the 130 so games to this point, or 120 plus. It's been a wild one of a season, but it's been amazing covering it all with each and every one of you amazing Mets fans. I've made this the number one Mets post-game show and the number one Mets platform for yet another year here on YouTube, not directly affiliated with the Mets or SNY, and also there on Twitter X, as we have been consistently live there every day all season long. We are consistently getting thousands of views just like we do there on YouTube. I'm looking forward to seeing the growth that we're now going to have here on the audio platforms for all my viewers and listeners that prefer to hear Wardy rant or break down a ball game or break down the latest in Mets land out of the comfort of on their commute, drive, or back from work, or on a long drive throughout the late vacation trips you may have going before we hit fall in the next month or two. So let's get into the lineup now, everybody. everybody, as Francisco Lindor did go for 3 today, but a 263 average, 803 OPS, and elite defense helps make up for it. Mark Vientos 1 for 4 with a run scored, 3 strikeouts. Not a great day for Vientos. Struck out at least 5 times the past 24 hours. Would like to see a little bit of a better approach here at the plate. Did get on with a single today, so not faulting him there, but had a high strikeout that was not so good and was one of many Mets batters that had no recipe for that bullpen that was presented by the Baltimore Orioles. A 277 average and an 884 OPS on the season. JD Martinez 1 for 4 day thanks to the 2-run shot oppo field, a pair of strikeouts, 256 average with a 781 OPS for the veteran slugger at DH. Pete Alonso 1 for 3 there that we saw with a double today and a walk, a 244 average and 803 OPS, including a brutal strikeout that I will say was one of the worst ones you'll see from Alonso this season. His final strikeout of the day and his final at bat, I believe, was first 3-0 in the count and somehow struck out silly in doing so. The only benefit of the doubt for Alonso is that everyone else was striking out against Keegan Aiken. They had no recipe for him whatsoever. Everyone but one, and I think that lone pop out, I'm trying to think on who even that was. Maybe it was Tyrone Taylor. I don't know. All I know is Starling Marte at least went 1 for 3 with a stolen bag today. Marte with a pair of strikeouts as well, 279 average and a 742 OPS. Jose Iglesias we saw 0 for 3 today with a pair of strikeouts. A rare lack of offensive showing there for Mr. OMG himself, who kickstarted today's game by doing some Mets pregame performance with Mets on-field reporter of the day there that you guys have seen in the highlights by now, I'm sure. Very cool stuff there that we saw for Jose Iglesias, who still has a 336 average and an 866 OPS this season. Jesse Winker came in a pinch hit for Iglesias there that we saw in the 9th inning. He struck out there, sadly, 261 average, 774 OPS. I liked the matchup, but I didn't love pulling Jose Iglesias for Winker there, personally. I understood why Mendy did. The potential to get Winker on, that bat-to-ball skills, a lefty versus righty matchup made sense. And even though Iglesias didn't have the best at-bats today, Jose's probably one of the guys I trust most in this Mets lineup to get on base in that clutch, high-leverage situation in the 9th inning in a tie ball game. Just like he did a day ago, bolting down the first baseline that we saw in the Mets loss to the Miami Marlins there in the 9th. So Iglesias, I would have liked to see him get an at-bat there because Winker did nothing that we saw striking out sadly. But Alvarez then comes in, and he is the difference maker. Alvy 1 for 3 thanks to the walk-off bomb today, a 253 average and a 728 OPS for our backstop catcher. Tyrone Taylor 1 for 3 with an RBI single, a 241 average and a 683 OPS, and Harrison Bader 0 for 3 today, a 258 average and a 689 OPS there on the season. And that is all the latest on the Mets offensive contributions in this one, as they actually tied the Baltimore Orioles in hits today 6-6 and had a just lesser expected batting average at 198 to the Orioles at 213. So both of them didn't have the best approach, nor was it a thing where they had a terrible luck. This was just one of those games where both teams had themselves more of a pitcher's duel than anything else. And thankfully for the Mets and thankfully for Francisco Alvarez, they prevail in this one. Now, as we pivot back into breaking down more on this ball game, everybody, I do now want to take the time to answer whatever you guys got for me. As we're at the 42-minute mark, I am going to answer each and everything that you guys got for me up until the 50-minute mark. I'm not going to go on a tangent or anything. So this is complete rapid fire. This has been long overdue. The live shows have been tremendous, as they always are. But the one thing I don't enjoy about them at times is that my inability to properly answer as many of you guys as I'd like, especially when we have 1,400 concurrent viewers the way that we do have here right now between Twitter X and YouTube, as we typically do. Zach Flakerton, thank you so much with the $2 haul. Zach says, Pearson is our discount Logan Webb, 91st percentile in ground ball percentage. We will gladly take that. Doesn't have the strikeout prowess consistently that I think a guy in Webb can certainly provide. But yes, we are seeing those flashes of brilliance from Pearson today, once again inducing those ground ball outs as well as he did. But yes, let's see here. Even with those defects, Pearson is still our best and most winning starting pitcher on the rotation right now. I wouldn't argue that he's completely our best, but he's absolutely our most winning pitcher. I agree with you on that one because that's a statistical fact right now. Let's see. Priest on a plane and back from being unblocked and having to rip it up, Mr. Carlson Mendoza. What a line. He should be wearing a Motley Crue suit and clown makeup, not a Mets uni. That cracks me up. And you know what I'm actually going to do to my replay viewers? This is where I'm going to cut things off because I don't know how much longer I'm going to go answering these comments. And in case they get on a tangent at all, I want to make sure that's ingestible for all my viewers of a 24-hour span and to my audio listeners as well. So audio listeners, you may hear more of this or it may cut off. Either way, for all my Mets fans, we're going to continue on with our live segment here for our post-game show. Continue to let it rip with any quick questions you got for me, any final remarks about this victorious matchup for the Mets, or anything in between as we typically break down. And my replay viewers, let me know your biggest takeaway from this 4-3 walk-off victory in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and once more, make sure to check out BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook, by clicking that link down below in the description today. That way you too get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Shout out to you guys. Let's continue on with the live show. And to my replay viewers, this is where we're cutting things off.